Awesome. Okay, good. Welcome, everybody. This is, I believe we're kind of counting this as two meetings. This is both the June meeting of the KFNA board, the Kingfield Neighborhood Association, and our yearly annual meeting. This will be a little bit of a different meeting than our kind of typical meeting. So if this is your first time here, we would encourage you to join us at other meetings as well too, where we kind of talk more typical neighborhood business, updates on what the board does. But this meeting tonight will be focused on some of the business that we need to take care of at our annual meeting, and also talking specifically about our election that is coming up and some ways to get involved here in 2021. So that is where we were at. We are going to hopefully be wrapping up at around 8:30 tonight, but I will say we'll maybe reserve until 9 if it takes us that long. If we could, since we have more folks here right now than we normally do, if folks wanted to put in the chat a quick introduction, your name, pronouns if you feel comfortable sharing them, your street address, kind of, or your relationships to the neighborhood, whether you live in the neighborhood, own a business, are visiting the meeting for another reason, share that. And then maybe even just something quickly that you're looking forward to in 2021, or kind of into 2022 for the next year. We're going to be talking a little bit about the future of KFNA, both in terms of future board members and also in terms of this year's events and where we're going as an organization. So I think that would be a kind of an appropriate conversation and a nice way to kick off the meeting. So if you want to throw that in the chat, that would be great. And we'll keep on moving on with the meeting. So as I said, we have kind of three main items for tonight. We're going to be talking about some updates of what happened over the last year, talking about some bylaws and plan modifications, a candidate forum, and then things that are going to be happening here in 2021. Please know that this meeting is recorded and it will be published. So for the candidates that are here, we will be sharing your kind of statements here tonight with the community to help them and inform their vote on future board members of KFNA. So with that said, I am going to share my screen quickly. And I believe, Becky, you are going to be up. We're going to be moving into the Celebrating Kingfield 2020 highlights. And Becky, you're going to be up first.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Becky Dankowski. I have been working this last year on the Bridgel. Here it is. I just realized in looking back at my calendar, doing this since June of 2020. So I started it sort of a week or two after kind of the main wave of protests after George Floyd was killed. And for me, I started it because I wanted to keep at the forefront of my mind what had happened, and to ensure that we kind of, at least that I didn't go back to my status quo. You know, it seems like things happen. There's protests, people are up in arms, and then nothing changes. And that's what I didn't want to see happen. So I was hoping to do something that would keep me motivated and maybe help keep it in the eye of other people as well. And we have had, over the past year, it's kind of off and on, but we've had a pretty good turnout almost every week, except for the last month or so. Things have really slowed down. There's 2 or 3 of us out there a lot of the time. So we have decided to do it once a month, the first Tuesday of every month, instead of every Tuesday from 4:30 to 5:30 on the 38th Street Bridge. And I'm sort of, I keep thinking about it, and I'm having a hard time with it because I feel like the whole reason I did it is what's happening now. I feel like there's less people showing up. There's less, I don't know. I just worry that people will be complacent again and things won't change. And in the middle of all of this and everything that we've gone through, that this is the time to act. So anyway, yeah, I guess that's about all I have to say about it. It's been an interesting year up there. It's really fun if you come out. You get a lot of good feedback in terms of just waving and honking and so on and so forth. So I've been glad that I did it, and I wish that more people would come.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for that update, and thank you so much for the work. We've said this so many times here that over the last year, I just speaking for me personally, and I guess I'll maybe speak for the board too quickly, because I've talked with so many board members about this, about how impressed everyone has been with that, the vigil and the space that is being held on the bridge. And after all of the things that have happened over the last year, that as a space where people have seemed to gather has been both a community space and a vigil space and a space, as you mentioned, for reminding people. So yeah, I just been incredibly impressed and so thankful for you, and would encourage others to attend and continue to get the word out and keep that going. So thank you, Becky.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, moving on to 100 Days of Community. I believe Sarah T, you are taking this one.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. So I have the opportunity to represent the group that has been working on 100 Days of Community here in Kingfield. This is a group of neighbors, both people who serve on the KFNA board as well as people who do not, who basically came together at the beginning of this year and wanted to put something together to help us kind of get together as a neighborhood to go through some continued challenging times. And so it was January when this idea was formed, kind of the really dark and cold and sometimes isolating days of winter, in the best of times. But this year with the pandemic, it felt especially important to be making sure that we're connecting with one another and building relationships and getting through the pandemic winter together. And then also this was a time too, I think, when there was a lot of continued fear, I think, in our city and in our neighborhood, just around crime and harms and things like that. And again, thinking about how we can connect with one another as kind of an antidote to that fear was part of it. And then also we're coming up on the start of the trial of former MPD officer Derek Chauvin, who had murdered George Floyd, and thinking about how that might be another difficult time for our community and when people might be really looking for that connection. So really 100 Days of Community was designed as a way to both have connection, do some fun things, but also do some learning and action around anti-racism in our neighborhood, how we can work together as neighbors, how we can work together as a neighborhood for anti-racism, and to think about safety beyond policing as well. And so we had a lot of great activities and events and neighbors that came up with some super creative ideas and put them together and kind of ran them and with support from KFNA in a lot of cases. And KFNA, I think we did a great job kind of serving as the home for promoting and synthesizing all of these different activities. And so the Bridgel, as Becky had mentioned, was part of this. We had silent discos, chalk and walks. We hosted From Fear to Focus workshops. We hosted workshops focused on MPD 150. Butter Bakery hosted a book club that was reading the book Cast. And so much more. There was information about various campaign races here in the city, the Yes for Minneapolis campaign, some of the various park board forums and so forth. And so I think our 100 days have now passed. I mean, really, it was designed as a way to get us through the COVID winter, through the trial, and through the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. So it's 100 Days of Community has ended in terms of the actual campaign, but I think the spirit definitely continues on just in terms of the work that we're doing within KFNA. And also something that's come of it is we have a group of neighbors here who are continuing to meet to talk about safety beyond policing and to do learning and taking action together. And that's still going for a couple more weeks here with the hope of, seeing kind of where that leads us for next steps here. So a big thank you and acknowledgement to everybody who put together an event, who participated in an event, who promoted an event. I think it was a really fun and great example of neighbors coming together around a cause and really just grassroots work that is really powerful and meaningful here in Kingfield.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that update. And just to reiterate what you just said, as KFNA as like a hub of all these activities, and I think we talk a lot about that, and this was a really good example of a program like that. So thank you again for that update. This is going to be my update quickly. There's been a lot of discussion and activity over the last really year and a half, especially around our redevelopment committee. So one of the things that we wanted to kind of update folks on, we've been really working, the last real development that happened in Kingfield was the Nicollet Square project, and that was quite a long time ago. And over the last year and a half, we've seen a lot of mostly housing development projects coming into the neighborhood. We have a very robust redevelopment committee that has really taken on a lot of work this year and has provided a lot of input and done a lot of really great work. And so I'm really proud of those folks and would encourage folks on this call and also board members to continue to stay engaged with redevelopment. We know that change is going to continue to happen in our neighborhood, and we want to be at the table to influence that change and continue to have our neighborhood values and our values of equity and anti-racism and inclusion be reflected in the developments and change that we see in the neighborhood. And so one of the things, the things that we've done this year, looking at, really have done a lot of outreach and collaboration with affordable housing developers and community advocates. There's a list of them there. Reaching out to other neighborhood organizations, understanding that development and change doesn't stay within boundaries. And so working with neighborhoods around ours and trying to continue to collaborate on bigger initiatives. And one of the big things that we're starting to do and have been working on for really a while now is launching what we're calling the Equitable Development Scorecard work. This is a way to evaluate and really score development. One of the things that we realized when we started taking on this work, that there was a lot of work to do in even just education, having folks understand where the pivot points are in terms of development processes, how this works, what the role of KFNA is, what the role of a redevelopment committee is. And so we actually took a step, almost, I wouldn't say even a step back, but realized that really the first step of this process was laying this groundwork of information for our neighborhood. And that's the work that we're starting to do now in collaboration, hopefully in collaboration with other neighborhood organizations. We've been actively working with the Wedge, Tangletown, and hoping to get the Lyndale Neighborhood Organization continued to be involved in this work as well too. So that education and that outreach and that influence piece is going to include hopefully interviews, things that share with the community how they can get involved, how development works, how nonprofit development works, how what is affordability and why does the city look at it that way, and how we can change that, right, and how we can influence those things. So those interviews and that information hopefully will live on a website here shortly. We've been starting to work on it and set it up, and there's a lot of different ways that we're looking at engaging community in that, and then using that as the base information, the base knowledge, the base organizing potential to then ultimately developing this equitable development scorecard. The other kind of thing we've done is leading community forums around the developments that have happened. We've had large turnout at those and have had a lot of engaged residents providing questions, giving feedback to developers, and in both of the two main projects we've seen, well, really three, we've seen those projects, the form of them change, the look of them change, how the affordability works in them change due to community feedback, and that's a success in and of itself, and we're looking to continue to build on that. So again, if you're interested in this sort of work, I would encourage you to get involved in our redevelopment committee, where a lot of this work happens, and that is open both to board members and not board members. And the last, I'm going to kick this over to you, Sarah LR, correct, on some census work.
Great, thank you. And I do want to point out that all of these projects highlight the variety of partnerships that KFNA has in the neighborhood, from businesses to affordable housing partners to other neighborhood associations. And in the case of Census, our partnership was very strongly with Sagrado de Corazon and Incarnation Church. Within 4 weeks after COVID was announced, Sagrado was starting to launch a bi-weekly grocery distribution to all families in need. On the second week of their distribution, KFNA partnered with them and recruited a team of Spanish speakers, both from their congregation and also from the neighborhood, who took up across the street at 38th and Pleasant and flagged cars down to help them complete their census information. The work continued for 4 months on this bi-weekly schedule with this team of volunteers who were really committed to being there through the crazy seasons of Minnesota spring. Many of you know that Minnesota is the only Midwest state that actually grew in population, retained all 8 congressional seats, and actually led the nation in self-response rate at 75% of households reporting. And credit is given to this to a lot of the nonprofit partners that work to really make sure that underrepresented voices really were recorded in the census. It was really an honor to do this work. I'm sure you all filled out your census, and in a family where you know the details of your family members and are recording them, it was a pretty quick and easy process. But some of the people who we sat with had many, many, many people in their family and even more people in their households. And sometimes the process took 40, 50 minutes to work with them in Spanish to record all the information for their census. So it took great patience and was a really beautiful time of listening to stories of where they came from and why they are living here now. Sagrado de Corazon is continuing that work of grocery distribution. In fact, through this work, they grew from distributing 300 grocery packs a week to over 1,000 at the weekly distribution, and they're actually expanding their food shelf into their back garage and have put in coolers and stuff. And so this is work that you can continue to be involved in through their nonprofit and their congregations. And then I just put a link at the bottom of this if you want to learn more about the work that Kingfield did in 2020. It was very different work than KFNA typically does. All the events sort of got quickly swept off the table, and different things like census work took their place, and work was done in very different ways. So you can see that report, and thank you, Sarah, for sharing that link in the chat if people want to pull it up right now. In case people are, if you're viewing this on the recording, you can see it on the page. It's kingfield.org about at 2020 year in review.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you. Yeah. Thank you for everyone. Thank you, speaking of staff, for working through a very challenging year and working through a challenging year, I think almost exclusively by yourself, which I know has been challenging on top of challenge. So, and I know we also didn't name a lot of things that other board members led or other initiatives that happened through KFNA this year. And so, you know, I think as Sarah mentioned, that list has a lot more things that happened, and just appreciate everybody's work in what was a very challenging and different and honestly very complex year. So thank you all for sticking with us, and looking forward to continuing to grow and continuing to build off what we kind of the changes that we made this year, and also get back to some of the things that we didn't get to do this year as well too. So moving on to the next agenda item, our kind of one of our main business items, the bylaws and NRP plan modifications. I'm going to kick this back over to either Sarah or Alice to introduce this and walk through the slides, and I will move them along as you guys go through.
Great, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Sarah, for helping to put all this together. So normally we could just show you a balance sheet and a operation statement, and we'd have, a lot of spreadsheets and stuff to show you, but things are changing very rapidly in how Kingfield is funded, and how we'll and the strategies we use to operate in the future. So we are in very good shape right now. We have a couple $100,000 in the bank. We are very healthy right now, but there's always a big but. And the program change, the city is making changes in how it funds the neighborhoods. And we're going to see some immediate funding reductions. And you'll see on this slide here that the biggest slice of where we get our funding is from the city. And that's going to be cut drastically over the next 3 years. It's be cut by 10,000 this year, 20,000 next year. And by the end of 2022, it'll be cut by 60% of the total funding that we get from the city, which is far and away the biggest source of funding. And also the way we can spend the funding is changing. We fully support the goal of equitable engagement, but the city will no longer let us support administrative or communication costs, even though their communication and administrative expectations are going to rise with just keeping track of how we spend the funds in a different way and all the communicating that we need to do. So we're going to be in a difficult situation over the next year. So can you do the next slide? Thanks. So how do we spend the money? Well, far and away, the most money is spent towards staffing. And that's in itself is not the whole story, because where does the staffing go? The staffing goes mostly to support you doing the programs and supporting the volunteers. So the long and the short of it is, as we're having our funding cut, the amount of programming that we'll be able to do and support we'll be able to give to volunteers is going to be drastically cut back once we get into that new funding structure. Okay. And move to the next one, please. So as we can see here, what will be cut, mostly what we do is projects. We will have to figure out how to fund the administrative, but our administrative requirements are probably going to increase rather than decrease because of the way the city is going to require reporting. And we're going to have to spend more time on fundraising, and communications is so critical for our community. And next slide, please. So we've got options on how we want to balance the budget for now. It's been our strategy that we want to continue to operate as robustly as we can, as long as we can, because we don't want to just fade away and so that nobody knows what they're missing if eventually we do have to cut back. So we can do a few things. We can take money from our savings account. We can write grants. We can do additional fundraising and ask for additional community support. And we do have some money that is allocated from the past from the neighborhood revitalization program, or NRP. that we can move into some of these administrative lines, which will help buy us some time to figure out how we can restructure ourselves and think strategically about how to be a sustainable organization going forward into the future years. So we intend to do all of these things. So that leads us to what we would like the community to support is doing a plan modification on the for these NRP funds. So we would like to do two things. We would like to move $75,100 to support future housing projects and $79,500 to support the administrative and organizing work of the organization. So these two funding moves will help us be able to operate for at least a couple more years, maybe 3. And we're moving these things from, we're consolidating and Sarah LR, you can correct me if I don't have this exactly right, but the affordable housing money will be, it's a matter of consolidating the money that has been there, and the administrative support is from projects in the past that we just were never able to get going as robustly as we would have liked, like green initiatives. So this will be, we'll have an opportunity to vote on this, and we'll talk about that more later in the meeting. Sarah LR, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
I see Todd Shipman has his hand raised.
Yeah, can I just ask, what's the balance in that NRP account?
Funds remaining in the NRP account are roughly $300,000 total.
And that is, we're entitled to that over a period of time or indefinitely?
Yeah, it was committed to the neighborhood association. It's in buckets, basically, of projects. And so some of those are projects waiting to be realized. For example, there's a bucket called the 40th Street Greenway. And so if there is a project coming out of the 40th Street pedestrian bridge to enhance that gateway, there's a bucket of funding that could go to enhance that gateway and that structure. If that money is not needed, it can be moved to something else. So the $300,000 is basically in buckets. What Alice was talking about is the money for affordable housing right now is not it was in a housing bucket, but uncontracted. And the other money that's being requested to move to administrative work was in a project of greening business. So.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions?
Thank you, Sarah and Alice. And just the language, I think this is going to show up in the recording, but the language that you're seeing on the screen, the members of the association are essentially community members, business owners, people with in our community. So this, to do plan modifications, we as a board and as an organization come to the members, our community members, and say, hey, is this something that you would like us to do? And if and we'll be asking as a part of our voting process, both for new board members, and you'll see some bylaw changes for the community members to weigh in on these issues. That is a part of, I believe that's a part of, I don't say guidance, but actual kind of regulation from the city in how we handle these funds. So any other questions before we move on to bylaws? Great. Bylaws. And I believe David R., are you taking this one?
I am, Chris. Yep, thanks.
Yep.
So this is David Robbins. I'm a board member, and I'm going to briefly cover the proposed new bylaws that the board voted to submit to the members for approval at our last regular meeting last month. There's a link on the website to the entire proposed new bylaws. Thank you, Sarah. And I'm going to, and there's also a link to this executive summary. And I'm going to go over what are the main changes to the bylaws. Essentially what we're doing is we're entirely replacing our old bylaws with a new set of bylaws. The reason for doing that is our bylaws hadn't been updated in full since they were initially drafted when the organization was founded back in the 1980s. Laws have changed, city requirements have changed, and it would be frankly more cumbersome to do a piecemeal amendment of the bylaws than just to completely amend and restate them. The city worked with Jess Birkin, who's a nonprofit lawyer, in drafting kind of a template of bylaws that neighborhood organizations could use. These are in compliance with new city requirements related to funding. That's part of the Neighborhoods 2020 requirements. And these bylaws, though they're entirely restated, there are some things that remain the same, but there are a number of things that are different, and I want to cover those here briefly. One of the first things that members will notice is that the board of directors used to be required to have 13 members in the old bylaws, 13 directors. Now we've changed that so that, or the proposed change is that we can have not less than 5 and not more than 13 individuals. The reason for this is if we had 12 directors, 11 directors, what have you, which would happen fairly frequently when a director would leave and wouldn't be immediately replaced, we'd be technically in non-compliance with our bylaws because we didn't have the exact number of directors that we needed to have. This provides us with flexibility and avoids the situation where we're in technical non-compliance with our bylaws because we had a director leave and that director wasn't immediately replaced. This gives us a little bit more flexibility. The target would obviously be that we'd continue to have 13 directors, but this would permit us to be able to go down below that 13 director threshold. Secondly, you'll notice that we've shifted back to the old status quo. We had made a change in 2019 briefly to allow directors to serve at if they were 16 years old or older. We've moved away from that due to the potential that in the very unlikely situation that a director could be held liable for actions taken while on the board. It wouldn't be prudent to have someone of minority age held liable for actions they took while they were on the board. So this eliminates that possibility, even though it was remote, and it restores the situation where we have directors, they must be a majority age in order to serve. That doesn't mean that individuals 16 and older or 16 to 18 are no longer, quote, members of the organization. Individuals 16 to 18 are still members of the organization. They just won't be able to serve on the KFNA board of directors. The third major point is there is no longer a limitation on the number of terms that a director may serve. It used to be in our old bylaws that directors were prohibited from serving more than 8 consecutive years. The city of Minneapolis, in order to continue with the funding from the city, they're requiring us to change our bylaws such that directors can serve 6 years consecutively, then they have to take 2 years consecutively off, and then they can continue on for another 6 years. This is just a requirement from the city, and because of that, we put it in these bylaws so that we make sure we're in compliance with the city requirements. The fourth major point, this one's kind of a ministerial issue that helps the board function in a little bit more of a uniform fashion. It used to be in our current bylaws, we have the annual meeting right now. When new directors are voted on and assumed office, under the old bylaws, they would assume office immediately upon being elected. That would mean that there were certain directors who had never actually attended a regular meeting, i.e. like the meeting that we're going to have next month. They would then assume the role of director without having attended a meeting and without knowing what the current status of affairs is and what the votes are, and pending businesses with the board. This allows us to have those new directors seated at the next regular meeting, i.e. next month. They would be officially seated as directors. And that means if there's any unfinished business that needs to take place between now and then, the current directors would be able to vote electronically or have special meetings. But this just allows us to have the situation where we kind of have a 1 month lame duck situation where the old board is still able to manage the affairs of the organization, and the new board doesn't take the responsibility until the next regular meeting. That's when they're kind of quote unquote inaugurated. The fifth major change, under our old bylaws, we had a old process where we could have alternates for director seats. Essentially what this meant was, if an individual wasn't serving as a director, say that they weren't voted on at the annual meeting, they could serve as a quote alternate. And if one director left the board, the alternate would then be seated. That would be the person that would sit on the board. In practical terms, how this really impacts the board: once a director leaves, the board isn't required to seat an alternate. There won't be an alternate. We would be able to either decide whether or not to go forward with a special election at that time or wait until the next annual meeting, depending on the circumstances. But there won't be kind of a director in waiting that didn't qualify, didn't have enough votes to make the board in the first instance, and then gets a board seat by waiting in the wings. This allows us to make sure that everyone that's serving on the board was actually duly elected by the members of the community. The sixth major change: there used to be a limit on the number of terms or number of years that an officer could serve. So the board of directors elects officers of the organization, being the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, so on and so forth. Those are called officers of the board. They were limited in that they could only serve 4 consecutive 1-year terms. Each director is elected for 1 year. This removes that. The new bylaws remove the term limits on the president and the vice president. They can now serve as long as they can serve, which of course, with the change to the number of years a director can serve, you have to be a director in order to be an officer. This basically shifts the 4-year requirement, or the 4-year maximum, to a 6-year maximum, whereby if you're elected as an officer after you're appointed as a director, you can serve for all 6 years of your term as a director. And then because you're removed, you can no longer serve as director, you're no longer eligible to serve as director, you're no longer eligible at that point to serve as an officer also. So this kind of just dovetails the term limits for directors and officers in a way that is a little bit more logical. The last major change that we need to take note of is the fact that the organization, the nonprofit corporation, Kingfield Neighborhood Association, now has the power in and of itself to amend the articles of incorporation and the bylaws without a vote of the community members. So in other words, if we decide to amend the bylaws or our articles of incorporation at a future date, we will not need to pose that to the community at an annual meeting like we're doing right now. It would be something that would be able to be approved by the board of directors, and the benefit, as it were, of removing this requirement to get membership vote is this is a little bit of a cumbersome procedural rule that is not required by state law, and it does create some inefficiencies. There's been times where it would be nice to amend the bylaws, it would be nice to amend the articles, but the most logical time to do that would be the annual meeting. That might be a little while away. It requires a notice to the members of the community. So basically this vests the power to change the articles, the organizational documents of the organization, the bylaws and the articles with the board. And you know, the board of directors has been duly elected by the members, and they get the authority to change the bylaws, change the articles of incorporation without member approval, as before there were certain circumstances where we had to get member approval. And those are the main key changes. If there are any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can proceed.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions? So this, just as just kind of to tie this all together, the same with the plan modifications that we just discussed. This will all be voted on by the community, and we'll be discussing kind of that voting process here shortly. So the ways, if you're here right now, the ways to get engaged and actually have your voice heard on these things will be discussed shortly. And if you're watching this recording, please know that we will provide the link, hopefully probably attached to this video, for the way to the ways to that voting mechanism itself.
And Chris, to that point, this is David again. If anyone has a question, I'm sure that about the bylaws or about anything that's been discussed and you're watching it recorded, you should feel free to email me. You know, I'm happy to answer questions about the bylaws. I can be reached at david@kingfield.org. Otherwise, Sarah LR, Chris D, so on and so forth. Anyone that's presented here today, I'm sure would be more than happy to answer any questions you might have if you're watching this not live.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Wrapping up that portion, moving on to the kind of our next big item, and moving into the candidate forum. So I'm actually going to stop sharing here quickly, and I am going to send it over to Jerome, who's going to help lead this portion. Thanks, Jerome.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. This is a exciting moment and time for the board. We are excited to have a number of great folks who have applied to join this board. And so we want to take a few minutes now to give those folks an opportunity to introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves. So this is a chance for each candidate to have a couple of minutes to say, you know, a few words of introduction, but also to talk a little bit about what's most important to them as it pertains to our neighborhood and this board and what they would like to bring to it. So each candidate will have 3 minutes to speak on anything that they choose to speak on. Now we've given each of you some suggestions of things that you may want to talk about. I'll run through those again. You can talk about why you want to join the KFNA board, what you'd offer as a board member, thoughts on some of the issues that impact our neighborhood that you'd like to address as a member of the board, and then ideas on events or programming that you want to work to create as a board member, things that KFNA can be doing better or differently and that you'd like to lean into as a member of the board. But those are just suggestions. If there is something that's really pertinent to you or salient to you, feel free to use your 3 minutes to discuss that. But this is an opportunity for those listening in now and those who may watch this later to help inform themselves about each of you as candidates and the things that you most value and would bring to the board. So all that being said, I am not sure how we're going to select the order or if there is an order predetermined. And I'm actually not sure who the list of folks is. So we may just, I might just get my stopwatch ready and then call on someone to raise their hand and go first. And we can take it from there, unless anyone has any other suggestions about that. Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to volunteer to be our first 3-minute speaker? Oh, I think I see Jeffrey Jones giving a shrug of a raised hand. Jeffrey, why don't you go ahead and get started, and I will get my little stopwatch going now.
Okay, thanks. Especially going first, a little nervous going first, but I'll just give it a shot. My name is Jeff. I've lived in Kingfield for 21 years. I lived in my house for 21 years. I've basically lived in Kingfield for 26 years. I'm running because I think it's time. I am somebody who knows how to have a good time and laugh, but I'm also a thorn in a lot of people's butts. I'm kind of nervous about what I'm doing here because I have been an activist for 30 years of my life and never once thought about running for a council or for the neighborhood or anything, because I really do not believe in hierarchical structures. But I felt that it was time to at least put my hat in and try with what is going on. Some of you probably were going to get frustrated with me when I bring up this first part, because it was me who was bringing up the idea of gentrification in our neighborhood and asking questions. I'm just going to kind of read off a little bit about what I've thought. So sorry if I'm boring you reading, but I believe that gentrification needs to be stopped, and it needs to be stopped at the local level. I am frustrated with the fact that we keep using terms like affordable housing when I am an educated person with a master's. I work as a psychotherapist, and I couldn't have told you what affordable housing was until I had to look it up. Affordable housing is not affordable housing for low income folks. Affordable housing is pegged to typically an area, but I believe it's the county medium income. So if we include places like, say, Edina, where there's multimillionaires, that goes up. So that affordable housing is not about the area, it's about the larger area. So I want to be done with the words affordable housing. And every time we use those words, I want that to be seen as a gentrification word. I believe in low income housing and housing as a human right. I don't know what that would do in the association, except for being a voice somewhere, somehow in the large scheme of it. We are right next to George Floyd Square. I've heard people talking. I am about abolition, and I think Kingfield should be a proud abolition neighborhood.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Is that 3 minutes?
That's the 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to go next? And just as a note, I will in the chat make a note of when you've got a minute left and about 20 seconds left, so you can gauge.
Jerome, I'm happy to go.
All right. Todd?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Todd Shipman here. I live at the corner of 38th and Lindale. I've been a resident in Kingfield for 5 years, and trying to get my feet wet around here and build a relationship in the community became ultra important to me during the last year. And I was really impressed by the way that my neighborhood came together and the people that are in my neighborhood. And just as a result of, the George Floyd experience, and I really admire the way and felt welcome in my neighborhood, and the way that at least my local block or two came together and really gave me an opportunity to meet my community members. I'm a member of the Community Development Committee here. I'm also a Realtor, and with that, I am a experienced association junkie. I'm past president of the local association in Minneapolis. I sit at the national level of National Association of Realtors Sustainability Advisory Group chair. I serve on the Minnesota Association of Realtors executive committee, but I'm also chair of the Multiple Listing Service of Minnesota. So I think I bring a unique perspective to the board on housing, affordability, whatever that might be, or what is happening in our community with the cost of housing, or the value of housing, or the future of our neighborhood. I'm also very deeply concerned and interested in working on the sustainability of the association itself. So as you talk about finances, I think it's important that we have a sustainable future. We need to work on a strategic plan that assures that we have a sustainable revenue and income coming in. Other neighborhoods have that. I'm really interested in working with the committee on the scorecard, the development scorecard. I think there's some funding we could put together. I think there's some opportunities for us to build a software program in order to make that a really viable option. I'm also experienced with leadership development. And so I'd like to think about how our leadership proceeds in the future here and be a part of the community that builds a really strong organization and ensures that we have a sustainable future and really engages our membership in our neighborhood and make sure that they understand the relevance of the association. So I'm really excited to be here. I hope I can be a part of it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Todd. Do you have any other folks who'd like to take 3 minutes to chat? I think I see David's hand up.
Yeah, I'll just keep the line moving. Thanks, Jerome.
Absolutely.
I'm David Robbins. I spoke earlier and bored everyone to tears, and I'll try not to do the same here. I live on 44th and Wentworth. I've been living in the community for, I think, 4 years now. And I've been serving on the board for one term, a little over 2 years. It's been a really interesting time to serve on the board, as I think other people that have had the overlapping term with me can attest to. 1 year we were in person getting beers afterwards after board meetings at Lowbrow, and the next year we're doing everything remote and kind of scrambling, and it's been a learning experience, I think, for a lot of us. That said, I do think that I've learned a lot about the organization in the past 2 years that will lead me to being a more effective board member if I'm reelected. I've had now 2 cycles of understanding what the board is like, what events and programming we have, and what relationships we have with the community, and I'm excited to continue to build on those. I do think that there's a lot of things that need to be done moving forward. This is one of the most challenging times that probably has ever faced KFNA organizationally in terms of the change in the funding model. I do think that a lot of our focus is going to be spent the next 2 years on determining how to transition the organization to a sustainable funding model. I have a number of ideas. I think Alice's PowerPoint presentation really showed that the second biggest source of funding is event programming that KFNA does. I really would love to add one more marquee event and like spearhead it. I have a couple ideas ruminating in my head, and I've talked to a handful of people about it. And I'm more than happy to deliver those to the board so that someone else can run with it if I'm not reelected. In terms of what I've done during my 2-year service on the board, I'm always happy to dissent civilly, of course. I do think that sometimes the board tends to want to work in agreement, but I do think I sometimes ask helpful pointed questions. At least I hope my colleagues on the board think they're helpful. Maybe I'm being a little naive there. I do think that I like the fly spec, financial material, detail oriented. I think I help the board comply with our fiduciary duties. I've helped navigate the board in sticky situations with like the Center for Performing Arts, advised on those really dry bylaws, all sorts of other fun stuff. And I've enjoyed most of all, I've enjoyed getting to know my colleagues, and I'd be honored to be elected for another term. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, David. Who would like to go next? Any volunteers?
Can I ask David a question?
I don't know if there are any rules about this particular section. Actually, let's go through and let everyone have their 3 minutes. And then if there's some discussion we want to have afterwards, I think we'll do it that way.
Thanks.
Brighton, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, I can go.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm Brighton McCormick. I live at 37th and Nicollet. My partner and I own a house here, and we kind of run it like a community house. And I operate a small sculpture, fabrication, and home restoration business out of my garage. So kind of like the smallest local business owner possible. My background is in arts, nonprofit, and a little bit of grant writing, grant reviewing. I have an MFA in sculpture and a bachelor's degree in business. So I kind of have a balanced view of art and entrepreneurship. Recently, I've kind of been trying to get more involved in volunteer work in Kingfield and in South Minneapolis in general. I've been in South for about 10 years now, other than leaving for grad school for 2 years and coming back. So I think I'm at a point where I have a little bit of a flexible schedule with the career choices I've made, and I want to kind of take that to give back and find a way to be involved more and to know my neighbors more. I've been volunteering every week at the Chicago Fire Arts Center on 30th in Chicago. So it's been a really interesting experience to kind of see how the neighborhood's operating, who's working in these spaces, what are activist groups accomplishing with a list of demands or goals or agendas. And I was really impressed. The last board meeting I attended, they were talking about some of the efforts at MLK Park with unhoused folks. I'm a person who's experienced homelessness, and a lot of members of my family have too. And I think I'm kind of at a point where I never thought I would be a homeowner or kind of like crawl into the middle class. And I really grew up utilizing social services and utilizing some of these nonprofit environments. And it just feels like the right opportunity to go ahead and try to figure out like, what can I do about these things? How do we deal with people that are going through addiction and living in the park? And why is the buck stopping with the like Park and Recs board? Why is that like the solution to this problem? So I think that's really something that's frustrating to me, because I've just kind of experienced that, and I've had family members experiencing that, and there's just a better way to do things. I don't exactly know what that is, and that's kind of where getting involved in a hyper local level is kind of getting like a diverse group of people together to say like, hey, what the hell can we do about this? Like, this is not where I want to go. This is not where I want to see my community going. So I think it's like an effort to stop just being frustrated that I can't think of the silver bullet to like fix American politics, and then being like frustrated while watching the TV and thinking like, wow, here's a great solution to this. Here's this, like the equity scorecard, and just some of these on the ground initiatives, like showing up and asking people like, where are you at? What are you doing? How can I help you? And we're neighbors. What's your name? And yeah, like seeing things during the uprising too. I met tons of neighbors out in the street, and of course it's COVID, so it's kind of a tough time to really like come over for a barbecue, but just wanting to know, what I can do. And I think some of the skills that I have in the background that I have could be an asset. And I've recently been looking around the room saying like, where's the adult that's going to fix this? And it's like, oh shit, you're in your mid-30s, you have 4 college degrees and free time. Like, that's actually you now. So I think that's why I'm here. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Is there anyone who'd like to go next? Alice. Alice, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody who spoke. Really great points of view. I think this is a time when the city needs our neighborhoods more than they ever have. I've lived in Minnesota for 50 years. I've lived in Minneapolis for 35 years, most of it in Kingfield, but I've also lived in Uptown. My spouse's family is from the north side. I really love this city, but we have known for a long time that we've got deep problems. The MPD problem didn't just happen last May. It was a problem when I was a student and demonstrating. They were just as awful then. So we've got to fix it now. And I think the neighborhoods is where the change has got to come from. There is so much energy for change in this city. And I think 80% of the people, everybody I've talked to in this city, no matter where they are and what age they are, wants deep change in our city. And the neighborhoods is where those conversations and the listening can happen. And so I just want to do my part to help keep Kingfield a strong organization. I've been on the board for 2 years, just about. I've been the treasurer for the last year. And what I'm doing now is I'm retiring is, doing that kind of work with boards. And so I want to continue to do that work and see if we can't build a sustainable future for not just our neighborhood, but for all the neighborhoods. I am astounded that the city of Minneapolis does not want to support neighborhoods when they are the most needed they've ever been in the time I've lived here. I cannot imagine what they're thinking, but that just shows we need change here. So I'm very impressed with everybody that I hear and all the people, all my fellow board members. And so I look forward to having another 2 years to try to facilitate that change if I get that chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Any volunteers and hands up to go next? I see two. Sarah, I think you were first by a millisecond, so why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Jerome. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Cheetah. And tonight I want to devote my time to talking about finding home. So we're all gathered here tonight because we have found home here in the Kingfield neighborhood. And Kingfield is where my family is, where my garden is, my coffee shop, the gift shop that I shop at, and it's where my kids run up and down the sidewalk and where they play at the playground. It's where I connect with my neighbors and build relationships rooted in care. For me, finding home also means finding the people that I want to build and grow with. And for the last couple of years, the people I've been building and growing with is you, my neighbors, and doing that work through the Kingfield Neighborhood Association. I was elected to the board in 2019 and have had the opportunity to serve the organization as the vice president for about the past year and a half. And before I joined KFNA, I was on the board of another organization here in Minneapolis, Our Streets, or what was previously the Minneapolis Bicycle Coalition. So this was the experience that really taught me what it means to be in community, working together towards a common cause, to organize. I joined the organization in 2015 when I was about 6 months pregnant with my first kid. In that organization, I found dedicated, smart, and passionate people, and I experienced really what is possible when a group of people come together to dream, mobilize, and take action. Together, we had some big wins in securing safer streets in the city, but we also had some losses and some heartache. But whether it was a win or a loss, I knew I could count on the people in that organization to carry me through. In 2019, I decided to leave that organization because I was really interested in doing neighborhood-based work. And that's when I decided to run for the board of KFNA. I am invested in our city and in our neighborhood in particular, and I think I've learned a lot over the past couple of years. Particularly with neighborhood work, the stakes seem higher because we are neighbors, because it's that much more rewarding to build those relationships and honor our differences, build the trust, and work together. So finding home and community in an organization, whether it's been Our Streets or KFNA, has been some of the most powerful experiences I've had. Finding home in these organizations have prevented me from sinking into despair and hopelessness and a sense of powerlessness over these last approximately 6 years. And we all know there's been a lot to despair over. So finding home in KFNA has given me a strong sense of purpose in my community, and I hope I've been able to contribute even a bit as much as compared to what I've gained from dedicating time, energy, and resources to our organization and to our community. And it's for these reasons that I'd like to continue in my work as a board member with KFNA, and humbly ask for your vote to make that happen and to continue to build and grow together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. BJ, I saw your hand go up too, so why don't you go ahead and go next?
Great. Thanks, Jerome. Hi, everyone. My name is BJ Titus. I live at 38th and 1st. I've lived in the Kingfield neighborhood for about 5 years and have been on the board the last 2 years. and the last year as secretary. One of the things that I feel like I can bring to the board is my day job involves doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work, as well as relationship building, two things that are really important to this board and to our neighborhood. One of the things I really would like to see in the next 2 years, should I be reelected, is to work on financial sustainability for the organization and have some sort of revenue stream that we can really be relying on with the loss of the city funding. One of the things that I really would love to see is really, like I said, that financial stream to really work through making the vision, mission of KFNA continue in the neighborhood and make sure that we can continue doing the work that we've done over the last 30 years. One of the things I can bring to the board is working on social media, doing door knocking, lit dropping, taking notes and meeting as the secretary, representing KFNA at the farmers market, and keeping the executive committee meeting on a regular basis. So I ask for your vote and thank you very much.
Thanks, BJ. I see Josh's hand. Josh?
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead.
I'm the no one left. All right. Hello, my name is Josh Martin. I'm a renter in the Kingfield neighborhood at 44th and Harriet. I've lived in the neighborhood for 2 years. Our city has been going through trying times, as the events of the past year show all too clearly how far we have to go to reach the just, equitable society that the people of Minneapolis deserve. I discovered the Kingfield Neighborhood Association and some of the excellent work KFNA is doing to achieve those goals. I would like to be a part of that work. I have some experience serving on boards, and I also serve as a professional parliamentarian advising nonprofits and local government groups on Robert's Rules of Order and meeting procedure. This attention to detail and policy could be beneficial for the association not only in developing its own policies, but also in helping the association and residents follow complex processes within city government, such as the efforts to amend the city charter. I've also taken the time over the past several months to familiarize myself with and support the work of the association and groups of neighbors. I've attended multiple board meetings. I serve on KFNA's election education team. I worked with neighbors to gather signatures for the Yes for Minneapolis petition. And I have attended workshops on MPD 150 and had continuing conversations with neighbors regarding safety beyond policing. I would like to work with the association to further its work on affordable housing and on reimagining public safety, two critical issues facing our city at this moment. The role of the neighborhood association is to serve as a voice for the residents of the area, to bring neighbors together in community, and to empower and support the needs of residents, particularly those groups which have been traditionally underserved by neighborhood associations. I will strive to continue the association's work to reach out to make all residents of Kingfield feel that this is their home, that we support all of our neighbors. I hope you will consider including me as one of your choices to serve on the board, and if not, I will continue to find other ways to serve the association. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Josh. Do we have any other candidates? Looking, not seeing anything. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I really appreciated hearing from all of you. And I think those who watch this recording back later will appreciate it as well to help them make an informed choice. I think next in the agenda is talking about the voting procedure. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, you are correct, Jerome. I'm going to share a BitLink, which has the candidate information for all of you who are running for the board. And this is the way that we are going to be voting both for candidates as well as for the bylaw changes and the plan modification. And so this information will be available in our newsletter. It will be available during this meeting, and then feel free to be sending this information out to anyone in the neighborhood as well. This first page is the voting instructions. There are 8 candidates that are running for the board of directors this year. The candidate information is linked by everyone's names, and it will drop down to the information that you all provided to us beforehand last week. And then you will also have an opportunity to vote on the bylaw changes, a yes, no vote, as well as the neighborhood revitalization program plan modification that Alice and Sarah Linus Robinson talked about. And thank you to David Robbins for going through the bylaw changes. It wasn't boring to most of us, David. Hopefully none of us, but it is a very, very useful and very needed change for the neighborhood association. So again, there are links for each of the candidates. Information that will link to the bylaw changes on our website. Thank you, Sarah Linus Robinson, for getting that up on the Kingfield website, as well as the plan modification. And then there is a click here link. And I'll go into just that one section for you all to see. If you click on the vote here, you will be indicating that you are casting your online ballot and that you have not voted in the election already, 1 vote per member of the organization, that you're at least 16 years old, and that you either live in the neighborhood, that you are an appointed representative of a business, or you are a property owner within the neighborhood. And then you will have the option to vote. Yes, Sarah.
BJ, do you want to be sharing what you're looking at?
I can be sure.
Just so people see the intro screen?
Yep, absolutely. All right. So this is the intro screen with all of the information about the candidates, as well as the bylaw changes and the plan modification. And then there is a click here to vote. And there we go. This is the intro page. So you're saying by casting your vote online, you certify that you are at least 16 years old. You have not previously voted in this election. Again, 1 vote per member. And then you either live in the neighborhood, you're an appointed representative of a business, or you are a property owner within the neighborhood. And then if you hit OK and next, it will bring you to the ballot itself where you can vote. Any questions for anyone here tonight? I know I can't answer all the questions about anyone who's watching this later, but are there any questions from any of you right now?
When is this ballot open and available, BJ?
So it is open as of right now, Chris. Thanks for asking. I mean, it will be open for the next week. So 1 week from today, I believe it's June 16th. Is that right, Sarah? Yeah, June 16th, it will close.
BJ, this is David. So does it prevent you from voting for more than 7 candidates?
It does prevent you. Yet the logic is written in that you can only vote for 7 candidates or less. So
Okay.
you could vote for David, you could vote for yourself and no one else if you so chose.
I'd vote for everybody else but myself.
Any other questions?
And then BJ, if it's possible, could you maybe just flip to the next 2 pages where so people could quickly see maybe?
So I can't flip. I can scroll down to the next section, but I can't move on unless I vote.
Okay.
So here is the candidate voting themselves. And then here are the 2 questions about the bylaws change and whether you agree with redrafting, as well as the neighborhood association plan modification change and whether or not you approve this. The candidates itself is a required question and the other 2 are optional. So you can vote without voting for the plan modification and the bylaws if you so choose, and you just want to vote for candidates for the board. That is a possibility.
Great. That's exactly what I wanted to see.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Yep.
Can I ask a question about the bylaws? Is there a way like that on this screen where people can have a link to the bylaws?
So the link is actually in the prior form right here. So before you can click to vote, there is
Okay.
the options for those.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, BJ. And I would encourage board members, candidates, to share that widely. We've had pretty good participation in our elections in the past. Where obviously this is the second time where I think this is either our second or third election where we've done them electronically, and we're really excited that can get more people engaged outside of having to come to a specific meeting to vote. So
Yeah,
I would
it is our
encourage.
second
Second.
completely online. 3 times ago was a hybrid.
Got it. Awesome. Thanks, BJ. And so, yeah, I would encourage folks, especially candidates, to appeal to the neighborhood. This recording will be out there, but that doesn't stop you from appealing to the neighborhood in why folks should vote for you in all sorts of different formats. So whether that's door knocking, whether that's reaching out to people online, I would encourage folks to do that. So, so please do that. And that only helps you. It also kind of encourages folks to get engaged with the organization in different ways too, which is awesome. So great. Thank you, everybody. Next item quickly, and Sarah T, I will maybe ask you to throw the strategic planning survey into the chat. Just wanted to do a quick pitch. What we've been talking about a lot tonight is both in terms of candidates and in terms of a lot of the things that we've been providing updates on are the future of this organization, are the future of KFNA, and are the ways that KFNA can reflect and benefit the community. And what we decided as a board, this is kind of coming back now a few months ago, almost, is that we need to really figure out strategically how we as a board are the most successful, how we reflect what the community wants, and how we provide the most value, and how we continue moving forward, right? In terms of funding, in terms of relevancy, in terms of impact. And so that kind of kicked off a strategic planning process. There is a subcommittee of the board that's been working on this. And the first step that we really wanted to take was to get feedback from the community on what they see KFNA as. What does the community want? Where has KFNA really been successful? What is happening in the community, and how can we reflect that as an organization? And so that survey that Sarah threw in the chat, we're using this annual meeting as kind of a kickoff of that, and hoping to get as much feedback as we can. We've done some other surveys in the past with actually a good amount of success, and have gotten a ton of really, really great feedback that I think has really shaped how we as a board and how we as an organization operate. So just encouraging folks to please fill that out. We're also going to be understanding that not everybody's going to watch this meeting. Not everybody's going to be available on social media formats and in other online places. Are also going to be doing a lot of in-person solicitation of feedback via this form too, whether that's the Kingfield Farmers Market, whether that's going out and door knocking. We're looking forward to doing that, and especially door knocking in places and spaces that typically have been either underrepresented in the organization, or we haven't gotten great feedback in the past. So we've done this in the past where we've gone and door knocked, multifamily units, different areas of the neighborhood that were underrepresented on the board, and have gotten really good feedback and seen seen different perspectives that I think have shaped this organization. So please fill out that form. That link will also hopefully be in the information on this video as well. And if you have any other questions or input on strategic planning in the future of the organization, which is pretty much what we've been talking about all tonight, we would love community members' input and further engagement on that. With that said, for the last item of the evening, talking about looking forward, I'm going to kick it over to Sarah LR to talk a little bit about KFNA and in 2021 / really over the next year, and what to look for and ways to get involved.
Great, thank you. I do want to say that KFNA is in the process of returning to hosting and supporting outdoor events for the summer. In accordance with the current CDC and state of Minnesota guidelines, KFNA is not going to be requiring masks or distancing at their events, but community members are, of course, always encouraged to do what they are comfortable with, whether that's choosing to attend or not attend, to be masked or maintain social distancing as is comfortable for them. And I do want to emphasize that a lot of the work that KFNA is involved with in the community is not stuff that we are the lead on. So when we are in those situations, KFNA will follow the lead of the organizing organization. And so you can see that in practice right now at the Kingfield Farmers Market, where the market is still requiring masks because it is led by a separate board of directors. The organization did a survey and decided not to move towards in-person board meetings yet at this time. We're in a challenging position right now because our park still remains closed. So we don't have a public space large enough to afford distancing indoors, nor have we figured out a way to continue the recording of meetings to make them fully accessible to the community at this point. We will reevaluate this plan in September at the board meeting. So that being said, I do want to announce a couple events that we have planned coming up. I'm sure people have noticed that Porch Fest has been announced. Porch Fest will be June 17th. Right now we're at 19 stages and about 30 bands throughout the neighborhood. You can find it on Facebook. You can find it at kingfield.org, and the map will be posted next week with the locations of the bands. Some of them have teasers in the Facebook event. If you want to search for Kingfield Porch Fest 2021, you can see some of the announcements there. The Kingfield Garden Tour will happen again this year. It happened in COVID year last year, and our organizing team has come together again to bring us the event on July 15th. They did a really great job working with gardeners to create safe passageways that people were comfortable with last year. So it will be probably a more dispersed event with more sites this year, just to sort of keep fewer people in the garden at a time, probably with treats and drinks and snacks along the way instead of at a central gathering place. The other large project that KFNA is involved with this summer is the revisioning of Lake and Nicollet through the Wells Fargo community engagement process. Wells Fargo, as all of you know, I'm sure, was burned in the riots of last year and was recently raised. And there are 2 upcoming in-person community engagement sessions on July 8th, focused on culture and community, and July 22nd, focused on economics and economic impacts. These will be open houses, probably on site. Please watch our e-news. If you're not on our weekly Tuesday e-news, you can sign up at kingfield.org, but also watch our website for specific details. And there will be food and stations for learning and sharing your opinions and input on those 2 dates. The city has allowed that permits are being offered again for block parties. That includes National Night Out. The board will be talking at their July meeting about how they can engage with National Night Out this year. It is one of the, it is the highest contact event for KFNA throughout the year. It's a total honor to be able to attend everybody's block party. There's typically over 50 of them through the Kingfield neighborhood, and board members make a commitment to attending everyone that's registered. And then just really looking ahead, Nicollet Open Streets is still penciled into the calendar for September 19th. Nicollet Open Streets has canceled their first 2 scheduled events, and they agreed to announce at least 8 weeks in advance if they are proceeding with the event or canceling. If they're moving ahead, it will be followed by Lindale Open Streets, which is scheduled, I believe, for October 3rd this year. The last event we have planned for this year is the elections are on November 2nd. As Josh mentioned, he's been active in an election education team that will be doing a lot of work on candidate forums and charter amendment education through the summer. But it might be our last year to all be gathering together to vote at Martin Luther King Park before the boundaries or the precincts of the neighborhood are redrawn. So we will be celebrating with a polling party on November 2nd for sure. And then just as an update to other things we are working on, KFNA jointly posted a job description today. And we are looking to hire an equity and justice organizer. Spanish will be required, among other things. It's posted on the Minnesota Council for Nonprofits job website. And we'll be jointly hiring that position with the Lindale Neighborhood Association as a full-time employee of the two organizations.
Awesome.
That's our year.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you everybody for joining. That is our last agenda item of the evening. I said we try to get out of here by 8:30 and it's 8:28, so that is great. I just want to quickly say thank you to the board members that are here, the board members that are seeking re-election, and the board members that are, there's a few board members here who are stepping off. As we've alluded to and said explicitly tonight, this year has been tough. It's been tough for everybody. It's been tough for people personally. It's been tough for us as an organization. I just really appreciate all of you. And as a few people also have said, the community that we've had and the support that we've had here. So for the board members that are stepping off, thank you for your participation. Thank you for your support to this organization and your all that you've given. To the board members who aren't here that were on the board in the last year, as we've had a lot of, I'm gonna say a lot of turnover, but just it's been a complicated year. Thank you. And I would just say to the people who are here tonight, community members who are seeking election to the board, thank you. I know that this is also a big step for a lot of folks, and this is also going to be, I'm not going to say it's going to be super easy. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging for this organization financially. It's going to be challenging for how this organization responds to the complexity of our city. It's going to be challenging, and we need everybody's, heart and passion and skills. And I'm very encouraged by hearing everybody speak tonight. So thank you to everybody. And I am very much looking forward to this year, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing all of you in person shortly. So with that said, I will adjourn, and thank you all, and please vote, and we will see you at the next meeting.
Night all.
Thanks, everybody.